Right about now would be the perfect time for the New Orleans Saints to extend running back Alvin Kamara. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. You can also catch me as the Saints analyst over at WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I'm going to start telling you the things I'm most excited about heading into the 2024 New Orleans Saints season, beginning today with the one, the only, Taysom Hill. We'll break that down. We're also going to take a look at how the New Orleans Saints preseason offense showed differences already from what they did in last year's regular season. We'll go into the vanilla offense and just how vanilla it was or wasn't. Then we're going to kick everything off today with why it is important for the New Orleans Saints to extend Alvin Kamara right about now. Seems like a good time to get that done. We got all that and much more coming up for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much for making us your first listen of the day every day and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code in all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to receive the $50 bonus. PrizePicks, run your game. Right about now is the perfect time for the New Orleans Saints to extend running back Alvin Kamara. It's time to get it done. It's time, right? We're through the training camp, we're through preseason, all that other stuff, and then now all we're doing is sitting here waiting on the team to potentially extend Alvin Kamara. And right now is about a good time to get it done, right? You're through all the other stuff. There was the injury during training camp, the back tightness situation and everything. And then he's, back once the team gets back to New Orleans. It's all Gucci. Like everything's good. He's been at practice, all that. It's just time to get it done. According to Albert Breer over at Sports Illustrated, the Saints had an offer on the table for Alvin Kamara during training camp, but that offer either clearly did not meet what it is that Alvin Kamara and his team wanted, more so Alvin Kamara's team than himself. And that's just part of the negotiation, right? You go back and forth, all that. So at least it shows some level of progress having been made from where this conversation has been sitting for what feels like months at this point. So now that progress has been made and you got a little bit of momentum and everybody's back in New Orleans and the regular season's on the way and you've seen that you don't really have that many other options at the running back position at this point, extending Alvin Kamara feels like the right thing to do. Now, it's really easy to look at teams like Boise State and other collegiate teams that have really, really talented running backs out there and go, well, we could just not really worry about it. See what the draft looks like next year, all those other things, sure. But don't you want to get the distraction out of the way? There's ways to do this too, to maximize what you might be able to do in 2024 with Alvin Kamara without necessarily handicapping or jeopardizing what it is that you would have to do going into 2025. You can do this without creating a bad situation for yourself. If you're the New Orleans Saints, there's a way to go about it. Alvin Kamara has been clear. He's not trying to break the bank. He's not trying to get a big contract or anything like that. He just wants some kind of commitment from the team for his near future, which would probably mean like 2025. This is exactly what the Saints did with Demario Davis, with Tyrann Mathieu, restructuring effectively their contracts this year to kind of help them save a little bit of money. And then in exchange, they got some future guaranteed money, new time on their deal, all those other things. It's the same model that you're looking for if you're Alvin Kamara at this point. You've already seen it handed out to two other players this offseason. So it doesn't seem like it should feel like that much to ask. Although I will say that with it being the running back position, there's always going to be some hang up, some delay, some pause in terms of how much an organization's willing to give towards its future. You have a running back that's also knocking on the door at the age of 30, which is like the dreaded age across the NFL at the position. I get it, but this is not just some running back. This is not just some halfback that can catch a couple of passes out of the backfield. This is Alvin freaking Kamara. It's time to get the deal done, right? Like this just feels like it's time to get it done. And that's not just on the New Orleans Saints side, right? Like that's on Alvin Kamara and his camp side too. Like finding the middle ground. Alvin Kamara and his camp are not going to win this. The Saints are not going to win this. You got to find something in the middle. But here's what I will say. There is a vested interest clearly on both sides. Alvin Kamara has made it very, very clear that he wants to finish his career here in New Orleans. He wants to finish his time in the Big East. The New Orleans Saints have clearly made it apparent that they're interested in keeping him around as they have offered him a contract, according to Albert Breer. So there's mutual interest, which means that it's time to get this done. And it's likely that this will get done. Now, or it feels likely that this will get done. Now, I will say that the value on Alvin Kamara has been hotly contested, hotly debated over the course of this offseason so far, right? A lot of people just kind of going with the, hey, he's a running back, move on, you'll find another. Is that untrue? No, not necessarily, because you could say that about any position, right? Move on, you'll find another. But how long will it take you to find another? Will you find another? Do you have another right now? Will you have another for next year? All these other things. Like there's lots of those question marks. And I think that the injury issue that Kendre Miller has been dealing with is kind of, let me say, elevated, I guess, Alvin Kamara's value even more in this conversation, because it's like, look, I'm not the only running back out there that could get hurt. Like you couldn't keep one guy on a field for an entire training camp after one individual practice and everything. So how is this on me? You know what I mean? And so like there's this sort of bargaining tactic that you can use in terms of saying like, well, actually I'm the healthy one. Like I got a little bit of back tightness, but I'm good. I'm Gucci. Like I'm ready to roll and all these other things. And so that could potentially put the team or put Alvin Kamara in a pretty good negotiating spot when you're looking at the rest of the running back group. Now, where things get tricky is if the New Orleans Saints do what they did with Demario Davis, Marshon Lattimore, Carl Granderson, and actually wait until they're into the regular season to get these things done. Demario Davis extended week 2 of the 2020 season. Marshon Lattimore extended week 1 of the 2021 season. And then Carl Granderson extended week 3 of last season. If Jordan Mims goes out there and looks really, really good, and all of a sudden you have this undrafted, rookie contract guy in his second year that's like balling out in your system, then maybe you get a little bit more confident, you get a little bit more froggy, you're willing to leap a little bit more in these negotiations if you're the New Orleans Saints and things like that. So they could wait till they got into the regular season to wrap this up, but it feels like now is the time to wrap it up. There's one other player that we should be watching when it comes to the contract extension conversation as well. That's cornerback Paulson Adebo. Starting cornerback opposite Marshon Lattimore, had a stellar season last season, had a great camp while he was healthy this year. Can't wait to see him play in the regular season this year. They could tempt fate with this one and say, you know what, going to wait it out, watch and see what happens, because unlike running back at cornerback, you do have talent ready to come in and be starter players for you, right? It doesn't feel like you necessarily have that behind your guys in Alvin Kamara and Jamal Williams right now. You have to find out what you have. That's no offense to Jordan Mims. It's just we haven't seen it in a regular season game yet. So the Saints would probably like to see that before they're willing to stake millions of dollars of a conversation on it, right? And that goes both ways, right? Seeing if Jordan Mims can be the guy, seeing if Jordan Mims can't be the guy. But that's not necessarily what he's going to be asked to do this season. So how much do you actually get the opportunity to see? See what I mean? Whereas at cornerback, Alontae Taylor has already proven it. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a perfect fit for your system. All these other things. The Saints could tempt fate and say, let's see how things go in the 2024 season before crossing that threshold to go to the negotiation table with Paulson Adebo. But I don't think that's going to work out well for them if they do that, because I think Paulson Adebo is going to ball out this year. All right. So bottom line, though, you got to get the deal with Paulson Adebo done if they want to keep him around. But also, it's time. It's time to wrap up these negotiations with Alvin Kamara, get rid of the distraction, and boom, coast into this 2024 season. All right, coming up next, some of the things that we saw from the New Orleans Saints in the preseason were vanilla versions of their upcoming offense, but even the vanilla versions had major differences from last year's full-blown regular season offense. Let's break down the numbers here as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at Game Time. What time is it? It's Game Time. Game Time is my go-to whenever it is that I need to buy tickets for any event, anything like that, going to a concert in September. Not even planning on worrying about buying my tickets until later on in September. It is September. Today's September 2nd. Goodness gracious, we're already here. Well, anyway, concert's not for a few other days. I'm not even going to start looking at the ticket prices until later on, because typically when it comes to Game Time, the tickets actually get cheaper the closer that you get to the event, which is my style, because I love procrastinating being rewarded for it. So shout out to Game Time for supporting my habits. And I love their all-in pricing, as well as your ability to be able to see the view from your seats before you purchase your tickets with all-in pricing toggled on, no surprise fees. By the time you get to check out all that, I just love the transparency that you get in the ticket buying process. So look, take all the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. How are you when it comes to learning new things? Have you made time for yourself to be able to discover and try and learn new things in your life? Or was that something that was kind of lost in your childhood? I know for me, it was lost in childhood until I was about 30 or so. Then I started to kind of rediscover my sort of, I don't know, I guess I'll call it my sense of wonder, if you will. And therapy had a lot to do with that. It kind of allowed my back to school era to kind of come at a later point in life or come back at a later point in life. And so it's been really nice to be able to kind of lean into all of that, because it's helped me kind of reconnect with, this sense of wanting to learn. I said the sense of wonder earlier, all of those things too. And so therapy's been huge in helping me do that. And look, it helped kickstart a whole new career for me in that way, because I got so passionate about the idea of learning something new. So rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, family. New Orleans Saints vanilla preseason offense in 2024 looked very, very different in a lot of good ways than their full-blown offense in the regular season of 2023. Let's break down the numbers that show you how. We appreciate you very much. As always, make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. We really appreciate you for being here. For your second listen today, make sure you go and check out the new Locked On NFL. 2 shows every day breaking down the biggest stories around the National Football League. Thanks to our good friends, the madman Tyler Rowland, who gives you your double shot of NFL espresso every morning. And then you can check out The Barbershop with Tony Riggins for some real NFL talk later on each day. So make sure you check out Locked On NFL, which is also going to be helped out and powered consistently by the Locked On local experts. Imagine that, actually utilizing the local people that cover the teams that you love to talk about the teams that you love at a national scale. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? So go check it out today on the Locked On NFL page. And yes, I'm still on the podcast as well. So you can come and check me out on Fridays as we take a look ahead to the weekend of action over on Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay. So the New Orleans Saints' new offense, even though it was the vanilla version of that offense in the preseason, looked vastly different than the New Orleans Saints' regular season offense from 2023. And that could not be better news for Saints fans, because this is what you've been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for from the New Orleans Saints over the course of the past couple of years. It looked like it was time to, the phrase that we often use was like update the offense, which is always kind of a little weird. It's not really about updating the offense. It's just about, trying some of the things that are working in today's NFL. It's not necessarily updating it, because the things that are working in today's NFL are still concepts and things like that that are derived from, 70s, 50s, 60s, like whatever, you know what I mean? Like you're going to be able to go back and find all the versions or all the things that today's offenses are doing to an extent back in previous eras of NFL football. So it's really less about updating the offense and more about just like bringing in some of the concepts that are working right now, some of the things that are working today. So I think that's a big thing. And real quick, when I say the vanilla version of the Saints offense, I do mean it that specifically. It's not like the New Orleans Saints and every team around the NFL go to a gumball machine and pull an offense out of the gumball machine, and then that's their vanilla offense, which everyone universally runs as their quote unquote vanilla offense. It's less that, it's more vanilla version of the bare bones concepts that are foundational to your offense, right? So the New Orleans Saints vanilla offense looks different than the Green Bay Packers vanilla offense, which looks way different than the Cincinnati Bengals vanilla offense, which looks way different than the Miami Dolphins vanilla offense, so on and so forth. So I just want to make sure that I highlight that, because what these numbers that I'm about to share with you show is that there are some things that are changing around the New Orleans Saints core DNA, foundation, and principles of their offense. Will these things uphold throughout the regular season? Will they work throughout the regular season? Will they be effective throughout the regular season? And will they be executed properly throughout the regular season? Are all questions that we can't answer just yet, right? We got to wait and see what happens against Carolina this upcoming weekend. We are that close to football, which is super exciting. And of course, Dallas and then Philly, and then you got Kansas City eventually and all this other stuff. And I guess Atlanta's in there too. So the question marks of, okay, Ross, well, does this make the team better? Hope so. Hope so. Yeah, it should, but we don't really know until we see it's executed. But this does show a core change to the identity of the New Orleans Saints offense. And if you remember correctly, which I'm sure you do, over the course of the past few years, identity has been a big time conversation for this New Orleans Saints offense, as there have even been players, including the aforementioned Alvin Kamara, who have not felt that this team had an identity. Motion. All right. We're going to start at motion. We're going to start at motion and play action. These are the big things that we wanted to see the New Orleans Saints add to their offense this year. Well, motion jumped from the regular season number in 2023 of 34% up to 42% in the preseason. Not a humongous jump. It's it's pretty sizable, actually. I was going to talk it down a little bit, but it is an 8% jump. When you really think about it, like an 8% jump is pretty substantial. So really, let me give that credit where it's due. 8% is a pretty big leap. So that's a pretty sizable leap. And I think you're going to see even more of it by the time that you get into the regular season. Because remember, that was 42% of their offense, including motion, which was considerably higher in the vanilla version of their offense. Like that goes to show you that they're going to do a lot of things. And if you remember correctly, the first game, they didn't really run a lot of motion, right? They ran like 4 motions in the first, with the starting unit in the first couple of series and things like that. And the only motions were really either motioning a running back or motioning a tight end from one spot to another. Not a lot of moving around wide receivers, no snaps while motion was still taking place, things like that. So I would say that this number is going to go up during the 2024 regular season. Another number that I expect to go up during the 2024 regular season is play action. The Saints did, however, jump about just a little over 3% from their regular season play action calls last year, 14.8% for Derek Carr, right? Those are Derek Carr's play action dropbacks. And then the combination of Derek Carr, Jake Haener, and Spencer Rattler combined for over 17%, 17.9% of play action calls, or 17.9% of their dropbacks were play action dropbacks, excuse me. So a little bit of a boost there. Spencer Rattler was the one that got the big boost. And I do think that that's important to highlight, not because of Spencer Rattler particularly, but Spencer Rattler orchestrated the most scoring drives, orchestrated the most touchdown drives, simply got the most drives during the preseason as well. So maybe a little bit more of what you saw Spencer Rattler run feels maybe more akin to the foundation of what it is that Derek Carr will run during the regular season. So he was over 21% when it came to play action snaps, which would be a big time leap, over 7% leap or nearly 7% leap going into 2024. So that's a number that we'll continue to watch. But we know how effective Derek Carr has been with play action. So I definitely expect that 17.9% to take a big leap. One of the other things that I want to mention here, because we've talked a lot about attacking the middle of the field and also not always relying on the deep ball and passes behind the line of scrimmage, being able to take advantage of the short and intermediate areas a little bit more. We saw examples of both of those things over the course of the preseason here. So the first piece that I'll mention is depth. Targets between 10 to 19 yards down from the line of scrimmage, right? So 10 to 19 yards deep jumped 9% from 18% during the regular season last year to 27% during the preseason this year. So a pretty considerable, nearly 10% leap of attacking the intermediate area of the field. That's really, really good news for New Orleans Saints fans. And honestly, really good news for the New Orleans Saints, because it's something that they should have been doing for quite some time. Like the fact that they were that low on that metric at first or during the 2023 regular season is like a concerning thing. You want to see the team attacking this area of the field. Simultaneously, we also saw targets behind the line of scrimmage plummet 7% from 21% to 14%. So they've exchanged their targets behind the line of scrimmage with actually moving the ball 10 plus yards down the field, which is really, really important. I'll also mention that in 2023, targets to the middle of the field total just 18% of the team's pass attempts, according to NFELO, which is a great analytics site, free, all that other stuff. Really, really good. This preseason, that number for Derek Carr, Jake Haener, and Spencer Rattler combined in terms of targets over the middle of the field skyrocketed to 30%, 3-0. Went from 18% to 30%, nearly doubled. Nearly doubled loosely. Let me say it that way. Loosely, nearly doubled. So really, really good stuff there. I thought the offense was a little bit more balanced as well in terms of run, pass. Big concern still. 3rd and long, still a problem. Lack of efficiency on 1st and 2nd down, still a concern. Offensive line, still a concern. We'll see what that looks like when it's all starters all the time, though, right? So we got to wait and see on all that. Same thing for all these numbers. But I also will mention that they were very efficient in the red zone during the preseason, which mimics their efficiency in the red zone at the end of last season. So a good carryover in terms of the momentum there. So I think the New Orleans Saints showed you during the preseason, even in their vanilla version of their offense, that there are some big improvements being made from 2023 going into 2024. Will they execute them on the field? That will be the next thing. All right, for the next few days, I'm going to be going over the things that I'm most excited to see in the 2024 NFL season. And I want to lead it off with my number one player that I'm most excited to watch, Taysom Hill. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints for the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by the triumphant return to the NFL shows here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Our good friends over at PrizePicks, the number one daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active users. We love PrizePicks. You get the opportunity to jump in. They have projections for players, for teams, and then you simply pick whether or not you think that player or team is going to come in at more or less than their PrizePicks projections. And right now, you can win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. And you can get, over the course of September, a really, really easy dub every single week through September, because one Caleb Williams passing yard for the Chicago Bears gets you a win every week throughout September over at PrizePicks. So that makes you one win closer to winning back 100 times your entry. It doesn't get any better than that. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5, and you don't even have to win that bet to get the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Over the next few days, I'm going to be going over the things that I'm most excited about for the 2024 New Orleans Saints season, and I'm kicking everything off with quarterback, fullback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, all of the above, Taysom Hill, everything. Taysom Hill. We're going to dive into that here as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Don't forget, we'll be live later. New Orleans Saints holding practice later on today, presser, and then, of course, locker room. So later on this evening, I'll be live, just kind of going over some of the things we saw at practice. I want to try to do that every practice day with the exception of Tuesdays, because Tuesday they typically don't practice. There will be some exceptions to that when they have a Thursday game and all those other things. But I'm going to try to keep the 2-a-days going as much as I can here throughout the regular season with the ability to say, hey, I need an evening. You know what I'm saying? Like I need to be able to do that. So we'll see. But more than likely, hey, look, it's Labor Day and I'm doing a show. No days off. That's how we roll. All right. So Taysom Hill is probably one of the things that I'm most excited to see. One of the players, that I'm most excited to see during the 2024 New Orleans Saints season, because there's just so much that he's able to do. And this new Klint Kubiak offense has kind of already proven over the course of the preseason that he will be a big part of their offense, with the exception of that Tennessee Titans game where the team did not play any starters, Taysom Hill included. They just kept homeboy on the field a ton. I noted the other day that Taysom Hill averaged around 18 or had 18 non-quarterback snaps in the preseason, where he averaged around that same number during the regular season last year over a 17-game span. He's going to out-snap himself in terms of non-QB snaps from last year to this year. There's no doubt about that. And because of that, the Saints are going to finally be able to take advantage of a playmaker that they should have been taking more advantage of and utilizing more consistently over the course of the past few seasons. It's a shame honestly, that it took them until he's now 34 years old to go, you know what would be a good idea? Have Taysom Hill on the field all the time. Dang a game situation. Every game situation is a Taysom situation, as far as I'm concerned. And so it's a shame that it took this long, but we're here. They're here. They got there. It's all good. So I think that being able to utilize Taysom Hill to it's a compound of things. Utilizing Taysom Hill at a greater frequency is a good thing. Utilizing Taysom Hill not only at a greater frequency, but utilizing him in a system that elevates what he can do is a whole other piece. That's why it's great seeing him as a fullback back there, to where he's throwing blocks. Then all of a sudden you get to the goal line, turn around and hand it off to him, and boom, he's able to pummel it into the end zone for you because they're so accustomed to him blocking, right? Punch, counter punch, but not punch, counter, not punch, weeks 1 through 10, and then counter punch week 12. It should be more like punch, quarters 1, 2, and 3, and then counter punch quarter 4. That's the thing that you'd like to see a little bit more of from this team, is setting up and taking advantage of tendencies inside of games as opposed to 10 games later. And so this is a big thing that you want to see from New Orleans. And Taysom Hill gives you the opportunity to do that because you could do so many different things with him, right? You have that example of block, run, but you also have the example of being able to pitch to him and actually let him run the football. Pitch. And then all of a sudden, he's throwing the football from out of there. Or, of course, you could have him under center, or not under center, but at shotgun, and you're utilizing from there in terms of quarterback power, quarterback sweeps, things like that. But then turn around and throw the football again, right? That's one that we've seen the New Orleans Saints do a ton of times. Then you have the ability to utilize him as a blocker when it comes to him in the as a receiver of any kind, a pass catcher of any kind, tight end, in line, offset, slot, wide, wherever it is that they want to put him. He's able to contribute to you as a blocker, but he can also run routes and catch the dang football for you too. And the New Orleans Saints need pass catchers. There's just no doubt about that. And so having Chris Olave, having Rashid Shaheed, having Juwan Johnson, having Foster Moreau, who's taken a lot of big steps this year and is playing healthy this year. Dallin Holker, we'll see what he turns out to be. Cedric Wilson, who's a guy that can be that kind of not just possession. I don't want to limit him to being a possession receiver. I don't want to talk about him like that, but he can give you that aspect in addition to what he can do from the slot. And then Taysom Hill, who you can move all around and who can catch out of the backfield, in line, offset, in the slot, out wide, all these other things. It just shows you the excitement that a guy like Taysom Hill, the extra wrinkle that a guy like Taysom Hill, or wrinkles more appropriately, can bring you throughout the 2024 NFL season. So I'm really, really excited to see how Taysom Hill ends up being able to contribute to this team and all the different ways that he does it. He's one of the most exciting parts for me going into this year. And that's before we even get into the conversation of him. I guess we kind of broached the conversation, but remember, like, there's all the things that he does as a non-QB, and then there's all the other things he can do for you as a quarterback as well in terms of running and passing and everything. And we've seen a lot of these other actions, right? The jet sweeps, the end arounds, like all these other things that the Saints have tried that they've been running in training camp, sure, but that they've also put out on tape in preseason and stuff like that. What happens with a guy like Taysom Hill in the backfield, and how much more does the defense get held up by the fact that it's Taysom Hill back there and there's all this motion happening versus if there's Derek Carr back there and there's all this motion happening, right? Like, there's a lot of things that you get to take advantage of based on the fact that he is able to have this sort of unique physical mobility, not just an escapability to escape plays and things like that. I really don't even look at Taysom Hill as that much of an escapability type quarterback that can escape and extend plays like we've seen guys in the preseason like Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler do. I think those guys are better at that than a Taysom Hill is. But ain't nobody better than Taysom Hill at just running. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's better when it comes to that. You know what I mean? Like, his ability to take on contact, to run through contact, to welcome contact, to pick up yards after contact, to pick up yards after the catch, to extend drives, to push through, to push piles, all these other things. That's all Taysom, man. And like, ain't nobody doing what he does. I get the question all the time, is Taysom Hill a Hall of Famer? I get that question all the time. And I never really know how to answer it because I have very little faith in the Hall of Fame voting process. I think we've seen over and over again people stymied or stiffed when they shouldn't be or in when they shouldn't be and all these other things. Hall of Fame voting is not really like my cup of tea. And so I stay away from conversations on Hall of Fame with the exception of those that are obvious, like Cam Jordan should be a Hall of Famer, right? Like all this kind of stuff makes sense. But when it comes to Taysom, I don't really know where I sit on the spectrum because for me, I think of the Hall of Fame as a place to honor and respect NFL players who did things that no other NFL player was achieving at the time that they were playing, right? We can't say in all of history because eventually someone will come along and do the thing that that player did. You know what I mean? It's the Brady Mahomes conversation, the to an extent the Jordan LeBron conversation, right? Somebody did it first, and then there will come along finally at some point someone that does it better. And both of those things deserve recognition. And the way to give recognition to those that did it first when no one else was doing it is that Hall of Fame, in my opinion. That's the way that I look at it. So if I'm going by that criteria, nobody's doing what Taysom Hill is doing in today's NFL or has done before in the NFL, what Taysom Hill was doing, even if you go back to Slash. Like, even if you go back to Cordell Stewart, like, there are not players that were doing all of the things that Taysom Hill was doing. Yeah, it wasn't covering no kicks, out there making tackles on punts, blocking punts, returning kicks. No, you know what I mean? Like, that's the thing that I mean. And so by that conversation, sure, yeah, he could be a free agent, could be a Hall of Fame player, but I don't think that that's the way that people look at the Hall of Fame anymore. And so I think I'm on an island when it comes to that viewpoint. If I'm looking at the Hall of Fame as what it seems to be now, which is popularity, probably not, right? Because that's just not going to be what people are going to vote for. So I think it depends on what the criteria is for that given year or who the voters are and what their criteria is for that given year and all those other things. But for me, Taysom Hill is somebody nonetheless that stands alone in NFL history. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to watch him again in the 2024 NFL season. Remember, we'll be live with you later on today, breaking down everything that we saw, heard from practice, and getting ready for game week. This is crazy. This is absolutely nuts. We are here. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you go and check out the new Locked On NFL. And of course, go and check out our friends over at Locked On Pelicans and Locked On LSU. Keep up what's going on around Locked On Louisiana. LSU, tough loss. Hopefully it's not a sign for things to come. We appreciate you very much, as always, making Locked On Saints a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. Trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.